Foss today. His topic of presentation will be Budha in Rāma Jātaka. Please do not interrupt him in between. If you have any questions, he can address afterwards. Thank you.
Discuss some controversies about the chart. So we're very clear about the chart. So originally I thought discuss something about the history, but that's not the main point. Anyway, we'll just go through that very quickly. A small advert from my book, Geography of Planets, available on Amazon, in a gift. After all, we don't you have to give what you know. So that's good. So then the question of the solar dynasty, it's recorded that Manu founded the dynasty after the flood. And according to the Harivamsha Purana, Ikshvaku was the son of Manu, and he founded the Suryavamsha. It's said that after he survived the Great Flood, Manu settled down in Aryabhata, and established Ayodhya, the invincible city. Actually, it's very interesting. Someone was showing me yesterday that in Mesopotamia, in Europe, people think that Mesopotamia was the origin, the cradle, of mankind, civilization, and all that. And there's a thing called the List of Kings. There's a rock with the list of kings written on it. And it starts with exactly the same statement. It says, after the flood, kingship was established on earth. And this is the list of kings. So it's completely identical to the Valmiki and these other Puranas. So I mean, people debate about who got it from where, but I think it's interesting. After all, Mesopotamia is not very far from North India. It's just a few weeks' walk. So Rāma is the great, of all the Suryavamsha kings, he is the one we look up to the most. And Manu is also said to be the progenitor of the Chandravamsha. We all know the Chandravamsha, because that also has an avatar, Lord Krishna. And anyway, there's the whole story of Ila and all that, but we won't go into that now. So they do things like, there are lists of kings. A list of kings? In the Puranas also. So they see the list of kings and then they look up how long each king lasted, lived, and then try and add it up. So the last of the Suryavamsha kings is said to be King Sumitra. That's 362 BCE. So this is the range of the Suryavamsha. And in the Ramayana, there's two lists of the genealogy of the Ikshvaku dynasty, and Sri Rāma is the 60th dynasty. Now, of course, these numbers are significant from the point of view of Jyotish. 60? just a random number, right? And then after Sri Rāma, there's listed another 50 kings before the Mahabharata war. So people add that up and they say, okay, it was about 2,000 years. I'm not saying for or against anything, let people have their opinion and let them look into it. But so then there's the Ramayana says that Sri Rāma lived for 11,000 years. Now, fortunately, Guruji has enlightened us about 11,000 years. So, brilliant, actually. Never thought of it, of course. Like the way he teaches. When you hear it, it's just like amazing. Why didn't I think of that? So this 1,000 years, all the problems can come up because of the use of the 1,000 years, because the numbers get to be too long, really, for us to conceive of, which doesn't mean they're wrong. But maybe because, Sahasra means 1,000, but it also just indicates a large number, what they call Bahunamani. There are a number of words which can indicate a large number. So, then this brings up the whole issue of the yugas. Oh yeah, date of the flood. Well, okay, let's just talk very quickly about the flood. So, you find there's flood stories everywhere, from North America to China, everywhere. So, that means that it's some kind of global phenomenon. Now, there were local phenomena, definitely, but there was something going on a global level. And that's pretty obvious what it is. So, for example, Mesopotamia, we see evidence 5,700, that's about 8,000 years ago. And it's interesting, this is around the time the vernal equinox entered Ardra, the wet one. I mean, it's just very interesting. We study the vernal equinox, the precession points, and you see it gradually moving back. It's just phenomenal how it describes the history of mankind. And particularly interesting, I think, is that the Lord Krishna was born when the vernal equinox was in Rohini, at just about exactly the degree that we think his ascendant is. Interesting, huh? Of course, then you might jump at it and say, okay, then go back 2,000, 3,000 years and you'll get into Karika, and that must be the birth of Sri Rāma, right? But, we don't know. Alright. So about 20,000 years ago, large parts of the earth were covered by ice. The Himalayas was about a kilometer of solid ice on top of the Himalayas. And it got so cold that all the rivers stopped flowing. Can you imagine? So, then of course, it's gradually started melting, but when it was all frozen, then the sea level was about 400 feet below what it is today. So can you imagine you go to the beach and the sea level is 400 feet lower. So there's a huge amount of land, which is dry land. And today it's all underwater. And human beings have a tendency to go and live near the ocean, don't we? Of course, there's probably more food near the ocean, and it's more pleasant, because inland's very dry, and at this time it was very dry, and not very habitable. So, why don't we find too many evidences of anything? Because it's all underwater. Of course, the archaeologists here have discovered some signs of cities under the water, right? Off Dwarka and the Tamil Nadu coast. So anyway, go on. So then what about the Ram Setu? Well, in the Ramayana, when it describes it was part of the Indian landmass. There's no talk of being on an island. But of course, if you go back far enough, it was. Sri Lanka was fully part of the Indian subcontinent. So we continue. Yeah, so obviously at some point the water was rising, and eventually Sri Lanka became a separate island. But there's a tendency for this, where the Setu is, there's a kind of two currents which cause a kind of build-up of the sand and rock and stuff. But mostly it's sort of patches, little islands, right? So if you had a decent army of some strong monkeys, you could fill it all up and make a bridge. According to the records of the Rameshwaram temple, there was a bridge until about 1480, in which case there was some big cyclone and it became a strip of islands again. Here's what happened to the water level. I mean, it's just for your interest. You can see the extraordinary change that occurred. So all over the world, human beings were running away from the flood. And the flood wasn't just coming because the sea level was rising, because up in the mountains, the ice was melting, and every now and again there'd be a huge surge of water coming down the rivers, and all the people living near the rivers were in dire trouble. And then things happened, like the Mediterranean was a separate lake, as it were, at a much lower level than the Atlantic. And at some point the Atlantic rose and overflowed the bridge, the dam kind of thing disappeared. So the whole European thing, there was just this massive influx of water. In a few weeks, everybody was underwater. So this is the flood. Then the question is, what about the Saraswati River, which you all love? And of course, it's mentioned in the mention, but we don't know whether it reached the ocean. But there was a time, if you go back far enough, where there were multiple channels. So anyway, somebody did some, if you go back to the previous slide just briefly, if there was some research done, and they found the Saraswati, there's evidence of the Saraswati River flowing before the big freeze, so from 80,000 to 20,000 years ago, maybe before that as well. And then it says about 9,000 years ago it started flowing again. So it's just a hint, I don't know. There's other studies which have shown that about 17,000 years ago there was serious melting and setting. So, the rivers in northern India must have been really flowing. So maybe Saraswati was a bit earlier than that. So then the question of the yugas, well, I don't know. Normally we say 12,000 years of divine years, right? So we normally multiply by 360, which produces these very large numbers. And then people are struggling, Dwapara Yuga, 800,000 years ago or something. Anyway, we got a clue from Guruji about how to handle this thousands of years. Maybe it's more to do with something Jyotish-wise. Don't know. I'm not here to give you an answer on that. But we do know that some of the saints, like Sri Yukteswara, were looking for cycles of the yugas within the big yugas. And Jyotishis are always finding cycles within cycles, right? That's the whole basis of dasha. So it must happen. And some of the dashas have a repetition of the mahadasha and the antadasha, and some of them don't. So, there's no way of, we can't say any of these yogis are wrong with their subcycles. Okay. Is this the next slide? Okay, well, these are just, we know Sri Krishna was between the Dwapara and the Kali, and Sri Rāma was created to Dwapara. So, it's just interesting in the Valmiki Ramayana, Agastya is speaking to Sri Rāma, and he says, Pura, Treta Yuga. So earlier in the Treta Yuga, and then he's talking about the installation of Ikshvaku, and he says Pura Krita Yuga. So he's making it clear that Ikshvaku was became the king in the Krita Yuga. So there are those references. Good. So we're not arguing one way or the other for these things. It's just interesting. But there could be alternative explanations. We don't have to feel confused about it. What does Valmiki say about the chart? Well, we've seen this already in this conference. It's very clear that Ashtha Dwadashe Maase, Chaitra Na Valmiki Titao. So he's for sure he's born in the 9th Tithi of the Chaitra Masa. Nakshatre Diti Daivakye. So the nakshatra is Aditi. So this is already the big controversy starts here. Because does that mean the moon is in Purnavasu? So many pundits will insist this moon must be in Purnavasu, and some others will have some other opinion. Swacha samsteshu panchasu. So 5 planets are in Swa or Ucha. In Swa or Ucha, this word Swacha is used all the time in the Jagari Sutras. It's always Swa and Ucha, own sign or exalted. There's no other explanation for that one. So at least, for sure, 5 planets were in own sign of exaltation. So then that's the next controversy, which Guruji has already settled really yesterday by showing us that if the Shani retrograde will not count in this. Okay. Graheshu Karkate Lagna. So it's very clear that the Lagna is in Cancer. Vakitab in Luna. Now everybody takes this to mean Jupiter and the moon. So let's just leave that. That's not a controversy. Okay. So this is what we just said. Okay. So now we're going to look at the chart he's given us. Here we go. So everyone's familiar with this chart. So the whole idea is to see if some other pundits have come with some other ideas. So I was asked to discuss those other ideas and see what is right. The more I look at this chart, the more I love it. So that's what we're going to do this morning. But the main point is that. And if you take the sort of standard approach that we're doing with Jyotish today, you're going to say this. You say, how can the moon be in Purnavasu? The sun is in Mesha. That's the first thing. Well, maybe it's referring to the Lagna. Maybe some other explanation is there. You see, if Purnavasu is the Lagna nakshatra, we don't have a problem. Or maybe the nakshatras were defined differently at that time, because the teaching we have is from Parashara. If you look in chapter 3 of Parashara, then you see, and this is a very important for us. In fact, when it comes to teaching Jyotish, then, the first 2 chapters of Parashara are very precious. But in chapter 3, he starts teaching the sort of things that the average beginner of Jyotish is, studying, right? So the very first shloka of the chapter 3 is he's saying that the Rashis are arising out of the nakshatras. And Ashwini starts from the beginning of, Mesha starts from the beginning of Ashwini. Now, I get, because of the software, so everyone in the world has some different opinion, sends me an email. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And one of the big things is the temptation to put the nakshatras into the Varga charts. It's tempting. I was tempted, this was before I met Guruji, I thought about that. And I studied it, and it's not working. Later on, looking at Parashara, I see you can't do that because the Rashis arise out of the Nakshatras, it's not the other way around. So that's something that's very important. We should be very clear about that. So, the way it's taught by Parashara, which is a critical part of this whole system, is that Mesha starts from the beginning of Ashwini, and then it's 13 degrees 20 minutes, we all know this, progressing on through the zodiac. And this gives rise to the whole system of the Tara Bala, and out of that comes the whole Vimshotri Dasha. And everything is sitting on this one statement. So if you disconnect the Rashis from the Nakshatras, as some of our Jyotish friends try to do, you get chaos, because the whole of Parashara's system kind of collapses. They don't seem to understand that. You just can't do Vimshotri Dasha if you disconnect these two things. So you should be very clear about that. So it's a complete system Parashara's taught. But Parashara is, primarily you connect with Mahabharata period. So what happened before that? Well, we don't know really. But we do have some understanding that the Nakshatras were possibly treated differently. We'll see. Then there's the question of the 6 planets. Well, we've had an answer on that. By, Shani is retrograde, it's not really counting a bit. Okay. Alright, so this is Sri Ken Rao's chart. He's done a series of videos on the YouTube. And so this is the primary thing I'm going to discuss, because mostly it's agreed. By the way, he didn't make up this chart. He's very clear, I didn't make up this chart. I got it from an Arabic astrologer. And he's just making some arguments in favor of it. But he says, I don't know. And this is the correct attitude, because really we don't know. But we can make Jyotish arguments, right? He made Jyotish arguments, Parvati can make Jyotish arguments. So what's the difference? Mercury is in Mesha instead of Vrishabha, and Surya is in Meena. Now the first temptation is to put Surya in Meena because then you can have the mood of Purvasa. Easy. Seems easy, right? So we're going to discuss about the implications of doing that. These two changes, basically. Now he's got the nodes in the same place, but I was asked to discuss about the nodes, so we will discuss about the nodes. It's very interesting. I think it's interesting. All right. So these are the things I want us to consider. The importance of the Aruda Lagna. Can we go back to the previous chart? All right. So the Aruda Lagna is fixed by Vami. Right? Where's the Aruda Lagna? It must be in Mesha. You can't put it anywhere else because the moon is fixed. So if you move Surya out of Mesha, it's no longer a part of the Aruda Lagna. Now, some astrologers don't bother with the Aruda Lagna, but we do. Because it's really the most important thing in the chart. It's not about truth. It's about what you know about someone is largely the Aruda. And we can say, for example, Lord Krishna's chart, the Aruda is with Guru and Buddha in the 5th house, in the planetary wall. This is how we understand the chart. So let's face it, the thing that Lord Krishna is most famous for is his teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, is it not? If you read the Mahabharata, you learn so many other things. But that is the primary Aruda, as we could say. Right? So if we think about what Lord Rāma stands for, what's the Maryada Purushottama, right? That's the first thing people say, isn't it? When you mention Sri Rāma, it's Maryada Purushottama. How do you find that in this chart? Maryada means the king, isn't it? It's the job of the king to set the rules and follow them. Set an example. The king can't make a rule and then ignore it. That's a set of example, right? So that's it. Nobody set a better example than Sri Rāma. So it's obviously all about Surya. And not just any Surya. It's going to be Ucha Surya, surely. But these are strong Suryas necessary for this. So what happens here? You've got a choice between Mesha with Buddha. What kind of person is that? Yeah, I mean, think about it. It doesn't seem to fit, does it? Mesha, okay, is a bit warlike. Buddha is interested in money. But then you look at it, and you see, okay, on the other side we have debilitated Shani, well, not debilitated, exalted Shani, retrograde. So there's immediately a competition between Mesha and Dula. If you've studied a bit of the Rasha or Jaimini courses, you understand that the Ruda is a bit flexible, and one thing is that if the Ruda Agni is weaker than the seventh from it, then the Ruda will tend to move to the seventh house. So in this case, Shani is surely going to overpower Buddha. So it'll just shift across there. And it'll stay there because Shani is so strong. So then, basically, this is a chart of somebody ascetic. I mean, Sri Rāma was internally ascetic for sure, but he only spent X number of years in the forest. The rest of the time he was the king. So it's just not working at all. It's completely doesn't fit at all. See, this is the point. You don't think about the Ruda. You don't think about this. But if you think about the Ruda, you've got no choice at all. You have to put Surya and Mesha. Right? Otherwise, it's all out the window. But this is just one point. There's a lot more points. What's the next slide? Let's see. Okay. All right, let's go back to that thing. Mercury aspected by 3. Shani, Mangala, and Rahu, right? Extreme curse. Well, Narada's curse is already taken care of because of the 2 malefics aspecting Guru in the Lagna, right? So where's the other curse coming from? Well, a serious curse, like 3 malefics aspecting Mercury. Mercury is gone. So then we say, okay, Mercury is the lord of the 3rd house. So what happened to the brothers? They must have been, they were probably all killed in some battle, right? No. They were all fully alive and functioning when Lord Rāma left, right? At around that time. And he left. Lakshmana left a few days before, or 1 day before. It's just not working. You can't put Mercury in such a situation. And who is protecting it? Jupiter's not giving any drishti. Shukra's in the 12th. There's nobody helping. Mangal's in Marana Karakastana. So it's a hopeless situation with that Buddha. This is just one point, you see. Let's go to the slide, back to this slide. You see the shift to Tula. Okay, we've done these points. Let's go to the next slide. Alright, now here's some more points. There's a very important concept which Guruji has taught us, which is basic Jyotish really, which is that of the Abhishek Rashi. Abhishek Rashi. How many people have heard of the Abhishek Rashi? No? No, few of you attended this 4 years ago. No, Rashi, the Abhishek Rashi. It's very simple. Wherever Surya is in the chart, wherever it's in the chart, it's in the 10th house from somewhere. You see, when Surya is in the 10th house, it has Digbala. And that, say, if Surya is in the 10th house, it gives enormous strength to the Lagna. Because from the Lagna, Surya has Digbala. If Surya is in the 11th house, it's giving Digbala to the 2nd house. See? If Surya is in the 12th house, it's giving Digbala to the 3rd house. So you just have to count to the the fourth place from the sun, and that place is blessed. Huh? Yeah, it's what we call it the Abhishek Rashi. I mean, it's just blessed with the maximum amount of light. So in any chart, you can apply this to any chart, and you'll see that particular place has some very great, it's illuminated. So one of the things we look for in the avatar, in the chart of the avatar, is that the ninth lord should be in the Abhishek Rashi. Who is the ninth lord in Lord Krishna's chart? Shani. And where is Shani? Seventh house. So where's Surya? Fourth house. So Shani is in the Abhishek Rashi. You see? Because the ninth lord is the one that's establishing the Dharma. Otherwise, how is the avatar? The avatar's job, there's only one job. He didn't come here to entertain himself. He came here to re-establish the Dharma, as Lord Krishna very clearly explains. So we would require that in the chart of Sri Rāma. So who's the ninth lord? Yeah, the primary lord is Jupiter, which means that Surya has to be in the 10th house, right? There's no option. Right? It's not an obscure idea. This is a simple Jyotish. Now, the question of why is the eldest? If you're Karka Rashi, then Mithuna is the 12th house, which, if you study with Guruji, means you may not be the eldest unless some other factors are there. So, the third lord is Budha, right? There's no argument about that. So the position of Mercury shows us something about the brothers. So this is where Mercury comes in. We're going to discuss this more. But Surya is important too, because you see, we've already said that if Buddha is in Mesha, totally cursed, then it's a disaster for the brothers. So let's move it to Rishabha, to Taurus. But then if you put it in Taurus, you say, well, there's no reason why he doesn't have a decent elder sister. He could have elder brothers, what's the problem? Well, there's some argument about why he should be the eldest because of the third lord in the 11th. We're going to discuss that slightly more later. But you see, if Surya is in the 10th house, then the 11th house has Papakata. So that, coupled with the yoga of the 3rd and the 11th, is enough to close the door on the elders. You have to do something, otherwise why is it? You see, so what we need is Buddha in Vrishabha, and we need Surya in Mesha, and then we don't have a problem with him being the eldest. Okay. Oh yeah, these are rather interesting. The Lakshanas. Do you remember this thing we learned from Guruji? Copper red eyes. Okay, well copper red is smart usually. If these things are indicating factors in the chart, then the sun is usually indicating the eyes, so we should expect it to be in Mesha. If it's gone to Meena, why is it copper red eyes? But I mean, the description will be different, right? If Surya is in an Agni Rashi, you get this kind of effect. Husky voice. Husky voice should be a kind of strong masculine sound, right? Well, Guruji did that joke, sorry. Anyway, so you expect the second lord, which is related to the voice, should be at least in a masculine side, right? You don't have to put in Meena. And the extra long arms. You know, in the Greek, in Greece, they thought all the heroes had extra long arms. It's another thing. I mean, who knows how many pundits came from India? statue of David, you know, the famous statue of David, his arms are up down here. So, extra long arms. Well, how are we going to see that? Well, third lord, I think, probably third lord. So Mercury somehow should indicate the extra long arms. So the first thing I would think of is that Rashis have different lengths. This is used in Jyotish. So, which are the shortest Rashis? Mina and Mesha. So if you only got a choice of three Rashis, Mina, Mesha and Vrishabha, it's not going to be Mina or Mesha, is it? This is one little point Valmiki has made. It leaves us with no choice for Buddha. It's got to be in Vrishabha. What's this? Okay. I just want to show you this planetarium. And you can set it up. I'm sorry, the resolution is not great on the projector, but these, the white things, are the names of the Yogataras. So in the Vedic system, we have Yogataras. Yoga means union. So it implies a boundary between one nakshatra and the next. So each nakshatra has a star which represents it. If you take yoga as meaning boundary, then that's the boundary of the nakshatra. So this results in very unequal nakshatras. And you see, this is a particular chart that it kind of fits Sri Rāma. So this is Jupiter and the moon here. And then up here, that's Pushya. And no, I can't read it. Anyway, this is Purnavasu, and this is Ashlesha. So this star, Ashlesha, Pushya, Purnavasu. But you see, these Yogataras are very far away from the planets. This is definitely like that. So if you're looking on Earth, this is how it seems. This is straight up. But when we're doing normal Jyotish, we're not using declination, we're using latitude. So the zodiac is going down and then it's coming up again. So there's always an angle. What are we doing here? I think it's like this, like that. Okay, so there's really, we project a thing like this at an angle, the latitude. But then some scholars, particularly Dr. B.B. Rāma, argued for projecting on a latitudinal, declination, in terms of declination. And it's also mentioned in Surya Siddhanta. But in Surya Siddhanta, that projection is only used for one particular purpose, to do with conjunctions. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have other applications. So the point I'm making is, we shouldn't be too rigid in our thinking, because maybe Dr. Rāma is right, maybe the whole thing has to be calculated in a different way. Because very few of these Yogataras are actually on the zodiac. So how you project onto the zodiac, it makes a big difference. You see, the problem with why people make arguments for changing the chart is because they're trying to apply, the little box that we put ourselves in, without really knowing if we're doing the right thing. So it works really well. We get good results, we predict things that come true often. That's fine. I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that we have to think a little bit out of the box before we dismiss anything. There's one more of these, I think. Yeah, so this is another view. There's a few thousand years between these two views. And so the result is that you see along the bottom here are the astronomical signs, or rather the tropical signs, because this allows us to see how the precession is moving. In my software you can click a button and you see the precession moving. It's kind of interesting. So as that happens, then the whole pattern of the zodiac, see the planet all on the zodiac here. The pattern changes. Anyway. fully agree that the second house is very critical when it comes to dying. The second house is your food, and you notice that when people are due to die, they stop eating, right? Just normal. You know when your granny's going because she stops eating. And even if you try to make her eat, she won't eat. So the second lord is very important. And usually, in almost every case of life, when someone dies, the second lord is strong in the dashas. But it doesn't mean it's showing the nature of the death. I'm not quite sure why he says that. Then he says Sun in Pisces and his Jala Samadhi. Well, I don't, if you read the section where Lord Rāma leaves, I'm not sure you can call it Jala Samadhi because he goes to the river, and when he gets to the banks of the river, Lord Rāma appears with all the gods, and he goes straight to heaven. So my reading of it is not actually going in the water and drowning or anything like that. So I'm not sure it is Jala Samadhi. Anyway, so there is an argument about the death should be violent. Well, Sri Krishna's Mercury, he says Sri Krishna had a violent death. But in his chart, Mercury is the second most unafflicted. So I don't quite understand that really. But in our tradition, we prefer to use the third from the Rudalaka, or sometimes the eighth from the Rudalaka. You've heard of this, third from the Rudalaka? Yes. Yeah, see, everybody's like that. It works very well. So in this case, there's no argument why the Rudalaka is, so the third is definitely going to be in Mituna. So we'll discuss that a little bit later when we get to the notes. Oh, it's very interesting. Alright, let's, this is my attempt to try and find the chart. Every couple of thousand years you get something close to it, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. Okay, we're just going to move on to it. We've already discussed Budha a bit, but maybe it's doing really other monitors thing. So let's skip through we've done it. So Pisces, Aries, and Taurus, and that's because Mercury has to be within 25 degrees of the position of the Sun. Well, let's look at it. If Mercury is in Pisces, it's debilitated. If Mercury is in Mesha, it's leaving aside the aspects is already not a good position for Mercury, right? Because Mercury doesn't like Mars. It's an uncomfortable position. And then Mercury in Taurus is powerful. You know, Mercury in Taurus is very powerful. Well, this is another thing Sanjay teaches. There's a thing called the functional exaltation. And Mercury is functionally exalted in Taurus, money bags, right? Huge resources. Okay, let's go on. Right, so then, here you see the what I want to do is give everybody a chance. Like if they say Budha has to be in Pisces, okay, let's discuss about it. And they'll say, okay, Mercury is, debilitation is cancelled, right? Cancelled? What planet is cancelling debilitation of Mercury? Jupiter, we're like that, exalted. So, that's an argument. You can't say that Avatar doesn't have a debilitated planet because Lord Krishna had debilitated Mars. And debilitating Mars in Lord Krishna's chart is cancelled by Chandra, exalted in Lagna. Similar. So that's not an argument against it. There is a Lichabanga Rajyoga here. Okay. Also, if it's with Shukra exalted, that's another kind of Lichabanga. Yeah. Okay. So, Pisces, Ketu is in the 12th house, there is actually, there's a parivartana. See parivartana? Between the 12th house and the 9th house. So what would that do? It would make the person very generous. Well, that sounds all right. But then you see, what about the relationship with his brothers? It's not so good, is it? If Mercury is in Taurus, then it's a very friendly relationship, extremely friendly. But if it's in Pisces, it's a bit more distant, right? The further a planet gets away from another planet, the less likely it is to be fully friendly. We know these rules, right? So that's one issue. Okay. Now we have the question of the Arudas. You see, we already looked at the Aruda like as an absolutely critical consideration. So Mercury is going to give us the Aruda of the 3rd house and the 12th house, right? Aruda of the 12th house, of the 3rd house. Yeah, so gone to the 12th. So, you know, that's, you know, I say he is a business person. Could be things related to marriage. Maybe a spiritualist if Ketu is there. Doesn't really quite seem to fit. Then if the other thing that's very important is the UL, the Upapadana. Because the spouse is shown by the Aruda of the 12th house. So we can't ignore that at all in this chart. So we can say, okay, if the UL is in the 3rd, because if you calculate the UL, you'll see it goes to Virgo. So you can say, okay, that's a nice Earth sign. Zeta came from the Earth, you could say. But, you know, you could get that from just the 7th of Venus. It's also Virgo. Then you see, you've got questions about the Lord of the UL should be exalted if you're a princess. Huh? That's what it's supposed to show. The family, the Lord of the UL. So, if Mercury is down there, it's not really. You know, people will make argument out of anything, but it's not a clear shot. Because definitely she's a princess. So then you have to go back to, okay, Nietzsche, Barker, and all this. So then you can say, oh, Jātaka was having a hard time before he got Sita. Okay. But it's not clear, really. Okay. There's also other issues. You see, if the Upapada is in Virgo, then Sita would have broken up with him just because he went off to the forest. You see that? The Shani in the 2nd house. Because he said, don't come with me, you stay in the comfort of the palace. He would have said, fine. No, that's not the reason. The problem isn't there at all. Okay, so according to Maharishi Parashara, if the 3rd Lord is in the 8th, the native is bereft of paternal happiness. His fortunes rise due to his wife, and he has happiness on account of sons and other gains. Alright? The 12th Lord is in the 9th, the native has differences with the teacher and their friends, and is focused on their self-interest. You see, the problem with the 12th Lord in the 9th house, Shani is the Karaka, right? So, it's really about Shani going to the 9th house. If Shani goes to the 9th house, it makes a mess, right? So that's why differences with the teacher. If your mentality is affected by Shani, then you argue with the teacher, you find fault with the teacher. This is not Sri Rāma. Right? Not possible. See, the 9th is the Karma Bhava for the 12th. It's the 10th from the 12th. So it does the work of the 12th house. You see. So the only way that's the problem, you see. It's the Mercury everything would be fine without the Mercury pair. It's just confusing the issue. Because let's say he's a very spiritual person. We're going to see why he's a very spiritual person. And if the work of that spirituality, which is based on the 12 laws, has got Mercury in the Dharma, in the karma position, there's compromises. Mercury is always compromising on something, potentially. It's a self-interest thing. So it's not the right planet to have in the 9th house, really. I mean, we're all ordinary people mostly. I'm certainly an ordinary person, and we all have for us it's like normal, kind of normal. But for someone like this, it's not. Okay. Right, now we're going to look at the 10th house. So according to Maharishi Parashara, the 3rd lord is in the 10th. The native will have all kinds of happiness, bereft of paternal happiness, acquire wealth through his own efforts, and support evil-minded women. I don't think so. If the 12th lord's in the 10th, the native will rise to the royal family and have only a little paternal happiness possible. So I think the main problem here is this very highly afflicted state of Mercury. Spoils everything. But definitely evil-minded women, that's for sure. Okay, next. Okay, what happens to the Arudas? Well, the Aruda of the 3rd house goes to the 5th house. You look at the 5th house. Severe Papa Kartari, isn't it? Rāma Chani. Very severe. So what happened? He got disconnected from his sons. He wasn't even there when they were born. But he didn't get disconnected from his brothers at all. You see, A3 means it should have happened to the brothers as well. It didn't happen. They were there from the beginning to the end. Full support. Okay, the UL goes to the 8th house. Well, there's 2 lords, exalted. Shani, but it's Vakra, so we've already said it doesn't really function as exalted. And Rahu is fully debilitated. So how is that showing the family of Sita? It doesn't. And if really the UL was in the 8th house, Rāma would have gone off with some other woman. Potentially, it's possible. From the position of Venus. I mean, Venus is very beautiful in this chart, of course, but the issue that would separate him from his wife would not be Dharma, really. More likely some other, more Venus-related issue. So it's just not possible, this. Okay. Alright, let's put Buddha in the 11th house. If the 3rd lord is in the 11th, the native is constantly gaining through profession. It implies great skillfulness. The 3rd lord in the 11th is fantastic for, being very skillful. He's very skillful in the 10th as well. Be unlearned but intelligent, well that perhaps doesn't apply. Adventurous and serving others. You've got to remember that this has a lot to do with Karaka, the 3rd house, Mars. But since the planet is Mercury, there's no question of being unlearned. But definitely adventurous and serving others. If the 12th lord is in the 11th, the native will have losses, but sometimes takes the wealth of others. Now, if you're a king, you have to take the wealth of others. It's part of the job. You collect people's money and then you distribute it to those who need it, right? So So that's a yoga for royalty. And he surely had losses. At least he lost his wife. And he lost his kingdom. I mean, how much more can you lose? Now there's some question of whether he had an elder sister. Valmiki does not say he had an elder sister, but some scholars believe that Dasharatha and Kausalya had a daughter, Shanta, and this was given to King Romapada. She was given to King Romapada as a child because he was a friend of Dasharatha's and he had no children, and he was very distressed. So they gave. And then, of course, she played a critical role in the Ramayana because she was then married to Rishi Shringa. It was all part of the, King Romapada had to save his kingdom from drought. And he was advised that the only way was to bring this young man of exceptional purity to the kingdom. But his father was very fierce, as was hinted at yesterday. And so some strategy had to be developed so that they weren't all cursed. So after he was sort of lured away behind his father's back. And the moment he got to the palace, he was immediately married to Shanta. And then he was put on the golden throne. And so when the father arrived, ready to burn the whole place down, he sees his son sitting on the golden throne with this beautiful woman, the princess, and he sees all the servants and everybody serving him. And so he calmed down and he blessed them. So that was. But then, when Dasharatha needed to have a yajna done, to have sons, people advised him he must call Rishi Shringa. So Rishi Shringa must come with his wife, and so this is all how it all tied together. But we don't really consider her as she's not considered as an elder sister or anything. Firstly, Valmiki doesn't say so. And secondly, anyway, as far as the analysis for all families goes, generally the ones who are entitled to the throne are considered. That's what I've been advised. So, anyway, this is all an aside. But we've discussed how the Lord of the 3rd and the 11th is the yoga for being the eldest, and the Papa ensures that happens. So anyway, when Rāma was born, Shanta had already gone, if she was as a child of Dasharatha. Anything more? Okay. The 8th race is the 7th house. You see? So you've got to put out your 8th race, your parakrama and your effort. The 7th house is exhausted Mars, it's a war, and it's to do with recovering your wife. So this is it. Wells in the 9th, Lakshmi Sthana. It kind of has to be in the 9th in some sense. And the Lord's exalted, indicating marriage with a princess. And you see, the problem is that the UL is in the 12th from the AL, from the original. There's the problem. And the Aruna Lagna has exalted nation. So the thing that causes the break in the marriage is Surya. Questions of Dharma. You can't get this unless you have this setup of the planets. So this fits. There isn't really another combination that fits. If Sri Rāma was just living an ordinary life, he wouldn't care so much what his neighbours think. But when you're the king, you have to think on a bigger scale. So there we go, it's that. Okay, so then, Lord Ketu's in the 12th. So there's a lot of significance to this. For one thing, it's related to the spiritual status of the world. Well, I think we'll come to that a little later when we talk about the nodes. Is that the last slide? Oh, I think there's one more. There's one more. Okay, this is really part of the third from the Rudalagna is Mittu. Now let's suppose Ketu isn't in Matuna, then it comes down to Budha, what's happening. But if Ketu is there, then there's Ketu is kind of dominating. So the chances are that the person could have Mahasamali, it's possible. Because if anyone's going to give you Mahasamali, it's Ketu. Anyone? Yeah. I mean, that is the classic case of Jātaka. We don't have a chart, unfortunately. I don't have a chart. Anyway. Okay, so let's, is this a good time for a short break? Yeah. 5-minute break? Okay.
So in the
You want to ask a question?
in the previous slide, how did you get UL in the 9?
Huh?
The previous slide,
Yes?
how did you get UL in the 9?
It should be in the 10.
10 pals.
That should be 10th, right?
Yes, 10 pals. Should be 10 pals. The Lord, the 10th is exalted. That's a typo. Yeah. Sorry, that must be a copy paste. Yes. Well, if this is in local party, it's a bit tricky with cases.
I agree with that, but that's one thing. The second thing is, do you consider checking all the small lines?
Cases won't change the refer to the root line.
No, I'm saying from Arudha Lagna to A3.
Yes.
If you do that, some other Mercury may also just matching very well. Because that way, whoever comes to you, the sun becomes Carfax, exalted. That way it functions very well.
Upapad is in the air.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that makes Arudha smaller. From AL to UL is one.
Yes, that's a very good yoga.
Yeah, that
Really
should
good.
be good. Like that.
Ignore what I said about Turkey at the 9 pass. Yes.
Yeah. So I have this
It's a very, very fantastic yoga.
Yes. I have this question of K2 being in 12 hours. Will you reverse it? If you reverse it, then there is a problem with the UL calculation. Everything will be reversed. There is a problem.
I don't think so. I mean, the thing is, K2 only reverses under certain circumstances. It's an optional kind of situation.
As he has learned from the system.
Where are you going to put the UL then?
No, with Mercury house, it's working fine. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So UL will come to 10th house. If I check UL, second house in the reverse, 9th house will become the sustenance of marriage.
So you're putting the second house in Pisces.
Yes.
Yes. That's possible.
There is purity becomes a question.
But then the third of the second house could be.
That is the only thing that I wanted to say. The other thing is,
I think the thing is the air on the UL being in nation with Surya means that the UL is dominated by the Surya. They're both dominated by the Surya. So from the Arudha Lagna, the prime characteristic of the person is shown by the nation. and the UL is suffering from it. You can say that also, it doesn't have to be in the second, actually.
Yes.
It's the problem is it's Mesha and the Surya, because the king is, Surya is not doing things out of emotion. It's the law, the rules.
From the Upala context, Surya is not a big man like the Upala.
That's
There
correct.
is one more term like that.
No, but that's different. Yeah.
I just want to communicate, see in reverse, Dharma factor and purity factor can come in the picture. To sustain the
Yeah.
marriage. That's it.
Yeah. That might be maybe right.
And one more thing is,
Yes.
if you consider Aruda Sambandha, from
Yes.
Aruda to UL or A3, then 11 house is too very well. You will find other things. Aruda Sambandha, A and to A, UL, we calculate.
Yes.
1 to 17. We take Karakas, Aruda Sambandha Karakas and see how the Karakas are placed.
Yes.
That premise is working well with Mercury in 11th house and compared with other houses.
Right.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yes. That's a good point. Yes. Okay. We can have more discussion later. Have a 5-minute break.
So let's take a 5 minutes break and Dr. Foss will come back with another topic, notes in Rāma Jātaka.
I mean, let's face it, the whole entertainment in life is also connected to Rahu or Ketu. If you go to a movie and there's no Rahu or Ketu, you think it's boring. Isn't it? You thought about it. It's either Rahu or Ketu that pulls the crowds. Now, in this case, we've talked about the third from the Rudalite now. And if Ketu's there, then Ketu can ward off death. Because your friend will just keep you alive. So there's a very interesting moment in the Ramayana where Sri Rama's come back from Ayodhya, from Lanka rather, to Ayodhya, and everyone has come. Hanuman is there, and all the others are there. And Sri Rama embraces Hanuman. Then it says he has a beautiful necklace, big necklace of pearls with a massive Vaidurya. And he takes it off and puts it on the shoulders of Hanuman. So I thought that was interesting because it's a description of the jewelry he's wearing. So why is he wearing a Vaidurya? Which planet is that for?
No, sorry, Marod. Why to raise the Marod?
No. Well, you see, this is typical. It's typical because what is Vaidurya?
Any gemstone, generally.
You see, so there's a debate about it. Is it lapis lazuli? Is it cat's eye? But for sure it's Ketu. So he's wearing a big Ketu. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I don't know how to interpret it, but you can think about it. Good, so let's go on. Okay, so it's rational to think of Rama and Dhamma, the son of Pulastya. So these were great Brahmanas. You know the story? There was one of the kings of the Asuras was looking for a husband for his daughter, Kaikesi. And he decided that Vishwara was going to be the best possible person. So he said to his daughter, you go and stand there and present yourself. So Vishwara is doing his Agnihotri. He's in the middle of his Agnihotri when this young girl comes and stands in front of him. So he says to her, what have why are you here? And she said, my father told me to come and stand here, you can figure the rest out yourself. I mean, she said something more polite. That's what he wanted to do. So he said, because you come at a very inauspicious moment, your sons will be very cruel. And she said, I don't want sons like that. So then he said, but the last one will be extremely pious. So she had 4 children, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Shurpanaka, and Vibhishana. So 3 cruel and 1 extremely pure. So then they were growing up. Now, Vishwava had another son by somebody else, a bit later. Who was his other son? Kubera. So Kubera was a half-brother of Ravana. And when Kubera was born, he did tapas. In those days when they wanted something seriously substantial, they always did tapas, right? You noticed that. And eventually they got it. So Kubera got blessed by Brahma. He said, I need something to do and I need somewhere to stay. That's a good one. So Brahma said, okay, you can become the Dikpala. I need one more Dikpala. I'm appointing. I've got 3 already. So he gave him with 10 tasks, right? And then he said, well, where shall I stay? And it mustn't involve anybody's suffering. Look at that. Kubera's requirement to Brahma was, you have to give me some place, but no one should suffer. So then Brahma said, there's this city of Lanka, which is built on the Trikuta mountain, and it's been abandoned. It's empty, so you can just take it over. I mean, it's just very interesting. So the proper approach to wealth is don't hurt anybody. That's a proper approach. So we can see how much of that is being followed today. And so then there's this question of the Trikuta mountain. Whenever Trikuta is mentioned in the Shastra, it usually indicates some powerful practice, like Srividya, right? Anyway, I'm not here to say what it means because I don't know, but that's the implication, there's something very profound about it. Maybe Trikuta, if you have to live on the Trikuta, that means you have to do tremendous sadhana. And he had done tremendous sadhana. So having done that tremendous sadhana, he got that position. And since it was basically he got to live in the palace of the Devi, basically, well, nobody's going to suffer. So it all, anyway, it's interesting. So Kubera was living in Lanka, had all the wealth, and also got the Pushpaka, Vimana, and everything. And Kaikesi says to her sons, especially Ravana, he says, look at you, you poor, miserable person, and your half-brother is enormously wealthy. How is that? You got to shake up. You should be better than him. So Ravana, this must have switched on some light bulb in Ravana's head, because after that he focused. So he and the others all went off to do tapas. Because what else to do, you see? So they did very severe tapas, and eventually Brahma appears. So he says to Ravana, what do you want? And Ravana says, basically, I want to be immortal. And Ravana said, that's not an offer. Sorry. No, sorry. There was no sorry. So then Ravana says, well, I want to be, I can't be killed by the Devas, by the Asuras, all these big shots. I don't care a straw about the men and the animals. So Ravana said, fine. Tadastri. So then Kumbhakarna came next, and everybody was shaking, because if Kumbhakarna gets a blessing, we've had it. So they quickly recruited Saraswati, please do something. So she dropped onto his lips. So when he was offered the boon, he said, I need to sleep for a long time. Tadastri. After
pronunciation error. Yeah, typo.
And then Vibhishana asked for completely pure mind. He said, I must never think anything negative, and I must be only devoted to God. So he got his wish. He asked for the Brahmarastra if he ever thought of it, he would come, and he got that. And he got immortality. That's how he came to be a charity. So, anyway, so that's the story, the backstory. And so Ravana was now a menace to everybody. Alright. So, now, if you put Rama and Janu, then you think, okay, that indicates some Brahmana connection, son of a Brahmana. And very cruel, because it's Rahu. Devotee to Lord Shiva, I think that's the Janu. And when he heard about Sita, he immediately lusted after her. So, obviously there has to be some connection with Jupiter, so you get that through Janu, but maybe you could get that somewhere else in the chart. Rāma has to be involved because the person has to be very cruel and very violent and all that. And there should be some connection with the spouse of Sri Rama somehow. Now, Rahu in the 6th house fits all of these. And the 2nd house Drishti is particularly lustful. I don't know if any of you heard my lecture with Baba on this Drishtis of Rahu. But I focus on the 2nd and 7th houses. Because the 5th and 9th houses are Jnana Drishti. They're more about knowledge. But the 2nd house Drishti is really what he wants. So in everybody's chart, the 2nd from Rahu is what they're thinking they're going to get. Of course, Rahu has some other idea. You get it, I'll take it away. So it's the big drama is usually the 2nd from Rahu. Because Rahu says, no, it's the 12th house. I'm thinking it. You think it's the 2nd house? I think it's the 12th house. That's the thing with Rahu, you see. Everything is like that. But in this case, you see Rahu's 2nd house Drishti is on the 7th house. So that's totally fitting. Okay. Well, wherever Rahu is, the A6 is going to be in the 8th house. Yes? It can't go anywhere else. So the A6 is in Kumbha, so the Rahu connection to the A6 is there anyway. So if we put Rahu somewhere else in the chart that has a Drishti on the 7th house or perhaps the UL, we might make an argument for this. I'm just saying, if you want to make an argument for some other position of Rahu, then that's how you start. Of course it's going to fail, but we can mention the possibility. Now, the 7th from Rahu is Kama Drishti. It's the lust. Rahu is lusting after what's in the 7th house also. But Ketu was standing there. You see, in the 2nd from Rahu, there may be nobody to protect you. But in the 7th from Rahu, Ketu is always standing there. So that means that the 7th from Rahu is always a battleground between the higher spiritual values of Ketu and the lust of Rahu. Is a very problematic location. Because often Rahu is kind of overpowering Ketu. You have to keep the spirituality has to be kept very high. And even then it's tricky. So here, the 12th house is not just the 12th house from the Lagna, it's the 12th house from the moon. So it's doubly connected to your relationships. So what it means is that the whole drama regarding the relationship is to do with the question. You see, it's Mituna. So what is the question? It's all about, has some something inappropriate happened here. Rāma says, you slept with some other man. Ketu says, no, she's absolutely pure. This is the whole drama, you see. So when Sita has to prove her purity, she enters the fire. Ketu Agni Rāma. Fire will always protect her, isn't it? So this is, if you take Ketu away from that point, all of this goes away. I'm not sure how you can replace it. But if it's there, it's all clear, very clear. And it's an ongoing problem. This seventh house in Rāma is not a one-off shot. It's an ongoing problem. So the problem was there, it was resolved, they got back to Ayodhya, happy life. Then the problem arose again. Rāma doesn't give up. Alright, I mean, let's face it, it's still going on, isn't it? It's still going on. Because, people are still debating about it. People say, Rāma didn't treat his wife properly and all this. So all this kind of nonsense is just an ongoing consequence of this Rāma drishti. So that's why we have to decide, are we sitting with Rahu or are we sitting with Ketu? Right now, Ketu is surging. This is it, The temple is coming up. The whole of Ayodhya is being transformed. In a few years' time, this place is going to be fantastic. It's going to be a lighthouse. Ketu is going to be just driving the darkness into the distance. It doesn't mean that, if you wait long enough, it might not come back, but we're living at a point where there's going to be a fantastic kind of awakening. We have to be strong with the Ketu, the spiritual side. The sadhana has to go on. Because if there's some sadhana going on, Rāma's winning all the time, isn't he? Okay, we can put Rāma with the 11th or the 4th or the 8th. But then the problem is no protection from Ketu. And you see, Ketu is not being, Mithuna is not being protected by Guru either. So it's so down to Ketu. Only Ketu is there to protect. Now, the 12th is the third from the sun. The third from the sun is the wings of the bird. So, if no one is there to protect Sita, some bird has to come. And the bird will fight with his wings. So, this is Jatayu. But unfortunately, Rāma chopped his wings and he fell down. But that wasn't the end, because when Sri Rāma came, Jātaka could tell him which direction Rāma had flown off with Sita. So he got some intelligence. Isn't that Ketu? Spy network? He got intelligence. And then, when he got to the shores of the ocean, he got help from another person, another bird, right? What's that here?
His brother.
Yeah, his brother. Exactly. So, Sampati. So Sampati was able to see. He couldn't fly, but he somehow got to a high point, and he had fantastic eyesight. Birds have great eyesight. So he could see what was going on in Lanka. So he kept getting this intelligence. So then what did he do next? He sent Hanuman. Hanuman went spy. He got to the gates of Lanka, and instead of being huge, he really became small. Nobody minds small monkey running around. You can't do anything about them anyway, there's too many of them. So he was able to go around Lanka until he found Sita. Then he thought, I'll have some fun. So he let himself be captured. You know the story. And so they set a fire to his tail. So he just ran around the town till the whole place was burning, and then he was gone. So anyway, this is Lord Rāma's intelligence network, providing all the info. All right. So this is, oh yes, it's the quest of ascension. You see, K2 in the third from the original it gives you a chance of a miraculous ascension. Maybe I said this earlier. So if we take it somewhere else, then what does Mituna show? I mean, it doesn't really show anything interesting. Then if K2 is the Lord of the fifth house. The Lord of the fifth house and the 12th house is a wonderful yoga. You know, it's said in some shastra that, you know, you go off into the mountains seeking God. Because, you know, the fifth house, we know what the fifth house represents. It's basically what you love, what you like. And if it's gone to the 12th house and it happens to be K2, then your main interest is spirituality. Of course, there's two fifth lords here, but that doesn't mean that they're not both functional. So one part is fighting for righteousness and all that. The other part is seeking the highest truth. We're aware of the Yoga Vasishta, right? The enlightenment of Sri Rāma. Fantastic. So that's the fifth lord. So fifth lord, I mean, how are we going to put it anywhere else? What else is Sri Rāma interested in that would be in any way fitting with Ramayana? And then, of course, the fifth house is also, you know, it's what you love. So if you have enormous love for your wife, then she comes in the fifth house also. So then she also ascends. Yes. Now, Ketu's Mula Trikona is in Pisces, which is the 9th house. So the position of the Lord of the 9th is very important. And Lord Krishna's chart, we have Ketu in the 9th house, in Parivartana with the 9th Lord. So we say this gives him the power to Brahma Moksha. But it's the same here basically. The 9th Lord is Ketu. But Shukra is exalted in the 9th house. So my very small and extremely humble opinion is that, you know, there's this indication that the devotion is very important here. Devotion to Sri Rāma can give you moksha. That's what I think this indicates. Maybe more sadhana is needed if sadhana is important. Alright. Next slides. Okay, fourth from Shukra. See, the fourth from Shukra is very important. You need a malefic in the fourth from Shukra if your wife is going to be kidnapped. Or something bad is going to happen. Now, the kidnapping was done using a bunch of magic, right? So, Ravana sent, what was his name? Yeah, Marichi. And he was the master magician, right? So he converted himself into a beautiful, unusual deer, and Sita got interested in the deer and said, so Lakshmana was sent to get the deer. And then when the deer was dying, it cried, Rāma, Rāma, right? And so Sita thought that Rāma was in trouble. I mean, Rāma went after the deer, right? He definitely looked Lakshmana to protect Sita. And so then Sita sent Lakshmana much against his will. And so he drew a circle around her. But when Ravana appeared in the form of a Brahmana, her natural tendency to worship the Brahmanas caused her to exit the circle, right? As far as I remember. So anyway, this is how she got kidnapped. But how are you going to explain the kidnapping if you don't have Ketu in the 8th? It's the fourth from Shukra, because Ketu is the planet of magic. You know, if it was a violent, if she was just seized, you know, it could be Mangala or Shani perhaps. But if it's some magical trick It's all magical trick. Even Ravana converted himself to look like a Brahman. I don't think it was magic. There's got to be Ketu. I think that's another argument. Now, there's a point here. Rahu and Ketu are Rashi Drishti. Rashi Drishti is very important. Because if they were not in dual signs, Grishma signs, then they would not have mutual Rashi Drishti. So if you want to explain why, all the Rakshasas got moksha, there needs to be some aspect of Ketu and Rahu. I mean, this is just my small point. So that could be invoked to explain that. So all of this keeps Rahu and Ketu in the traditional places. And it's very hard to move them. I just can't find any way of moving them. I'm sorry. Now let's talk about moksha. There are certain yogas for moksha. So usually they involve Ketu in the 12th house. There should be some connection between the 12th house and the lagna. Is there a connection? Is there a connection? Correct. 12th Lord aspects lagna. You got it. That's enough. Ketu in the 12th Lord aspecting the lagna. That's it. Then, really, you need quite a lot of sattva. There should be some dominating sattva, so it doesn't get diverted. You might think moksha comes in a package or something you can stick in your mouth and light up. Right? You might have one or two experiences that were quite out of this world. But it's not moksha as we're considering. So why did you go and smoke something when you should have been going to the ashram? Some tamas, isn't it? Tamas. Or you said, no, I think it's a great idea, I'll go once a month or something, but I'm too busy. So it's Rajas. Rajas is blocking. Rajas is blocking. Tamas is blocking. So even if you have the yoga, but there's no problem here with any shortage of sattva, right? Now, what about the chant of Sri Krishna? Does it work? Is there a connection between Ketu and the lagna? Yes, Rashi Drishti. What about the lagna and the 12th house? Yes, they're both conjunct. Conjunction. Rashi Drishti is there also. And then Sattva, exalted mood, no problem. So, we may not have all of these things. We just need some kind of powerful things as we see in the charts of avatars, and then we have whatever we have. The truth of the matter is ordinary human beings need some help. That's why we go to the Guru. Because you can't make it on your own. Honestly, can you? You try and you try and you try, then you have another lifetime, you try and you try and you try, and another lifetime, you try and you try. Eventually you get a guru. Because unless there's somebody who gets you to that, at least puts you on the spot where you can choose to go, the final step, it's just too difficult. Let's face it, even Sri Rāma and Sri Krishna took a guru. They had gurus. So if they had a guru, what are we talking? There's this whole business like, I don't need a guru, I'm already big enough, great enough, I'll fix it myself. Good luck. So that's interesting. Now, Guruji yesterday was showing us how the whole Ramayana is a spiritual process. So, according to some people, we can take Rama as the Atman and Sita like the mind. the functional one. We can't experience anything without a mind, can we? So that which is creating our universe and giving us the experience of it, we can call it the mind. It's not a small thing. You know the first verse of the psalm, do you ever heard? Shiva Shaktya Yukto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum. I'm very afraid to sing this in front of my Guru here. He knows all this much better than I do. But the point is, Adi Shankaracharya is saying that without Shakti, Shiva is unable to move, can't even move. So anyway, but the point is there are various stages of the process, and at some point you have to kind of drop the mind. Later on you can function with the mind, but there's a sort of phase where there has to be some kind of stepping back from the mind. You have to have a sort of witness, sakshi, or something. You know, there has to be some distance between the self and the mind. That's what the yogis say, and I'm accepting what they say. So, this could be what's going on here. Really. You know, we think, oh, terrible, Sri Ram sent Sita to the forest. But if we take it as a spiritual process, it's exactly what all of us are going to have to do as a temporary situation. Eventually they're united again in the higher realm. There's no real separation. Lord Shiva got separated